A big win for the Pacers on the road in Oklahoma City. One of their best of the season. How'd they do it? Why was Myles Turner so dominant? Pascal Siakam looks good. All that and more on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are talking about a Pacers win, a very important one for them, getting a dub in Oklahoma City over the Thunder to improve to 6-4 since the All-Star break somehow, despite feeling like they're not playing that well. This is among their best results of the season. Myles Turner was fantastic. The Pacers got off to a strong start. Pascal Siakam was really good. The bench stepped up again. Jarris Walker filled in. Everybody did their job, and the Pacers immediately flip and play again tonight. So we'll talk about the Chicago Bulls, a lesser important, but still kind of important game in the standings. I'll explain why later, even though I don't think it's necessarily a huge storyline. 121-111 is the final score in OKC as the Pacers beat the Thunder. No Jalen Williams. I don't think that is a big deal. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took 27 shots. The Pacers defended him very well, and they won, and we'll talk about all the whys in just a second. But we start with, is this the Pacers' best win of the season? Maybe so. On the road against a very good team. Entering the day, the Thunder had 19 losses. Only them and the Celtics did not have 20 losses yet in the league. In the league, they're crazy good. They're top 5 in both offense and defense. And yes, missing a key player. So are the Pacers, and they get it done on the road. Other contenders for Pacers' best win in Philly. I mean, they beat Boston twice. Both of those were at home. In Philly with Embiid playing. In Cleveland, although the Cavs weren't quite that awesome yet at the time. This one, I mean, you could take your pick among some of those games. The in-season tournament one was probably the most exciting one in Philly in terms of best quality one. I might pick this one. It's up there, certainly against a Thunder team that can make anybody look really good this season. Mark Daigneault's a wonderful coach, but the Pacers looked great. They looked really effective in this game. They pushed the right buttons. Basically, everyone who played had a positive plus-minus because all the lineup combinations made sense. And a couple things stood out about this one. I think the key takeaway for the Pacers in getting this win was the play of Myles Turner, who was fan-freaking-tastic in a game where he only had 3 rebounds. A lot of people would be rushing to point that out and say that a center needs more, and they're playing a crappy rebounding team, the Thunder, and Chet Holmgren had 13. Yeah, that's all true stuff. And Myles Turner absolutely dominated every other facet of the game that he played in a very meaningful way. He was spectacular. He had 9 points right away, right? Pacers went up 11-2 quickly. By the way, they won by 10, and they were up 9 in the flash. We'll talk about their start in a second. But Turner jumped all over the Thunder. Pick and roll layup with Haliburton to put him up 4-0. Cutting dunk from Nembhard to put him up 6-2. Three-pointer to put the Pacers up 9-2. And then he scored again on a dunk in transition from Siakam in the middle of the first quarter. He had 9 points before the Thunder had 9 points, right? Like, his start of the game was so massive for the Pacers. And I want to dig into this as like an actual theory or statistical based point at some moment in time. But we've seen it a lot recently, and it's gotten me thinking about it. I used to think this way about Sabonis a lot, and I still think this way about Sabonis. Myles Turner against really young centers who haven't played against someone like him, like very few centers, now that he's a really effective paint player as well, can really defend inside and out. And you've seen this with Derek Lively a lot recently. You've seen it with Durant a couple times this season. Like, those kind of young bigs who aren't quite used to that really struggle against Turner. And so against Chet Holmgren, who's a wonderfully good player and still had some flashing moments in this game, Turner can really make them pay, right? He can get going inside. He can stretch them out. He can move around. And so some teams go zone to make that easier, and some teams go zone to just cook up the Pacers in general. But as Turner gets better and kind of find ways to combat these guys, it really, outside of Wembanyama, has been a trend for like a couple months now. And I'd be really curious to really dive into the numbers on that and dive into some specific matchups. 29-12 against Portland. and Ayton and their young big man core, for example, last month. Like I should not be looking through his game logs like this. But anyway, you get the gist of what I'm saying. That is something that's happened a lot, and it happened again in this game against Chet Holmgren. And we've seen a couple games recently where Turner's impact is really first half heavy. And a theory I've had about that I tweeted during the game that, again, I would need to look more into is sometimes I think opposing teams think Myles Turner is the guy they're willing to live with beating them. And then when he does, they adjust and cut him off a little more at the expense of other stuff. Well, this game, Myles Turner had those 9 points early. He had 15 in the first half. And then in the second half, he kept finding ways to contribute with 9 points and 2 blocks, 4 for 6 from the field. I mean, he was just terrific all night long. And he paired it with 4 blocks. And that's something that stood out about this Pacers win that I'll tie in with Turner is his defense was once again really good around the rim. That he now has 14 blocks in his last 3 games, right? Had they found a way to beat Minnesota, they would have, their last 4 games would be 4-0 with Dallas, Orlando, Minnesota, OKC wins, with Turner having 14 blocks in those games and looking really good in all of them, a positive plus minus in all 4. He is on a tear right now. Like, he is playing at the level that I think the Pacers need him to. And it can, you can go back a little bit. That 33-point game he had against Dallas at home, he was 10 for 15 and had 12 free throw attempts. But that night, right, that he said about his big game, and I was asking about this, he said guys have been telling him to go inside more, right, get around the paint. And I think some of that has to do with Siakam being on the team. And I think some of that's just with, he's been really effective as a post finisher this season. Well, you've seen in this recent stretch, he took 5 threes against Dallas, 3 against Minnesota, 3 against Orlando, and 3 tonight. Right. That's a good number. 3 is a good number of attempts, but he's, below his season average. He takes 4 a game, right? In all but one of those games. I think you're seeing the effort for him and the Pacers too, to get him inside more. I think you're seeing him punish defenses for allowing him to have space, both from beyond the arc and as he kind of gets going towards the basket. And he looks really good. He's been playing very well of late. And against Chet Holmgren, who is a wonderful player and maybe just had an off night, but he found ways to score inside and out in a way that makes you think, right? And young guys thinking is usually what slows them down more than anything, more than any physicality thing or anything like that. When they have to think, they're a half step slower than everybody else, right? That's a problem for every young player, including Victor Wembanyama at times when Obi Toppin gave him fits very early in the season, if you'll remember that. You saw that with Holmgren in this game, and Turner was fantastic, and the 4 blocks really illustrate again that he was anchoring the defense quite well, and the Pacers defense quietly, not even really quietly, having quite the moment, right? Minnesota scored 113. Orlando scored 97 and now 111 allowed against OKC. Not a good offense, that Magic offense, but 3 good teams at least. They finished with a successful defensive result from a raw points perspective. Turner's level has been a big part of that, deterring shots, swatting shots at the basket, and helping his team win. Again, positive plus minus in all those games. Pacers in general, though, very good defensively today. And it's funny that I'm going to point this out because I actually tweeted at halftime of this game. Pacers were up 12 at halftime, and I said, some makeable shots the Thunder have missed. But all in all, I think the Pacers defended pretty well, and I think the Thunder had 46 at halftime. And then the Thunder scored 41 points in the third quarter, and then only 24 in the fourth. So here are the Thunder's points by quarter: 17, 29, 41, 24. So they got really hot in one quarter, which kind of makes stats and analysis kind of weird because they were rolling in that quarter and Shea looked great. But one of my notes from this game is it kind of felt like the Thunder were missing a ton of open shots. And maybe that's just because they were really spread out and in one quarter they were hot. But a team that felt like they were missing a lot still shot 38% from deep, which to me says the Pacers actually defended okay. And the Thunder made maybe some of the tougher ones, the ones that didn't feel as open. And they turned it over 12 times and they didn't, totally crush the Pacers in any specific way. The Pacers didn't even shoot that well from deep, and they were able to beat the Thunder because they had a good rim deterrence. They forced the Thunder to take some tough shots. They forced the right guys to take a lot of tough shots. And I think that all led to a very productive night for the Pacers, where the only starter for OKC to shoot better than 50% was Gordon Hayward, who took 4 shots, right? So the Pacers defense was fantastic, and it was all spearheaded by Myles Turner, protecting the rim, patrolling, being a beast on both ends. I even said his stat line: 24 points on 17 shots, 4 boards, 1 steal, 4 blocks, 1 turnover, +7 in a 10-point win. Another excellent game for Myles Turner in a string of many since the All-Star break. and it gets the Pacers a huge win. Again, perhaps their best victory of the season. And he's not the only guy who rose to the occasion. Pascal Siakam size, again, a huge factor. Other guys, of course, also stepped up in the win. Andrew Nembhard was really great. We have so much more to talk about this Pacers victory and how they got it done coming right up on today's Locked On Pacers podcast. Before we get to any of that, though, we've got to talk about the lovely folks over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, jump on over to Locked On NBA, because you can hear me yell about the latest happenings around the league. We talk Knicks, who the Pacers care a great deal about. Of course, Clippers, T-Wolves, and plenty more from around the association. Speaking of the Knicks and other teams, Pacers in sixth in sole possession. No tiebreakers required. Philly lost on Tuesday. Pacers win. Magic didn't play. Heat didn't play. Pacers sole possession of sixth, a full game ahead of the Heat, half a game ahead of the Sixers. And even if they lose, they'll be tied with the Sixers and ahead of them in the standings. So firmly ahead of them. The longer Embiid is out, the better for the Pacers. That means they just have to finish ahead of one of the New York, Orlando, Miami trio. If they can, of course, hold off Philly. That's not a guarantee, but I would project it. The thing is, yes, Miami's lost 3 in a row. I still think they're pretty good. The Magic have an easy schedule. The Knicks got OG Anunoby back. That's tough, but possible for the Pacers if they keep up their current form, with their road trip form, I should say. 2 important wins, back into sixth, and their goal should be to try to stay out of that play-in, of course, and get into a 6-3 series. No matter who it's against, avoiding Boston is, of course, priority number one, if possible, out of the plan. So, Pacers beat the Thunder on their quest to do that. When I was talking to the guys in Orlando, they kind of, many players have alluded to this or said something like this, like every game is now a playoff game for us, right? They're thinking of it that way. You can see it with their urgency and their adjustments and how they're playing. A key guy tonight, and you won't even really see it with any crazy stats for that, was Pascal Siakam. He only took 12 shots. Now, some of that's because he got fouled. He took 7 free throws in this game. Only air quotes, 18 points, 11 rebounds, huge. He's been so good on the glass recently for the Pacers. I'll talk about that in a second. But he was so good in this game. 2 steals and a block, no turnovers, +5. The thing about Siakam that's interesting in this matchup is, and people talk about this with the Thunder a lot, the Thunder are kind of small. They're not super small. And they started Hayward to get some size out there. They play Kenrich Williams, J Will, not J Dub, is kind of big, but not, he's a center. They don't have like a lot of 4-size dudes outside of Hayward. And so anytime Hayward wasn't out there, even sometimes when he was, Siakam can just dribble past him. He had a size advantage. That's why he got fouled so much, because he had a mismatch, and that was the best way for the Thunder to try to stop him. There were several possessions throughout the game where on an early switch or on a cross match in transition or whatever happened to not make it so a 4-sized player was on Siakam, he just post up and demand the ball because he can score all over these guys. And that's why he hits 50% of his shots without taking a 3. Right, so a lot of mid-rangers, a lot of stuff at the rim, but he can hit those effectively. Again, he shot 50% in this game. He got a bunch of rebounds. He played well in transition. This is the kind of stuff that he allows them to do that wasn't the case. I just talked about this after the Orlando game where, the Pacers did not play the Magic with Siakam the first 2 times they played this season, and you can immediately see how he helped with the matchups, with how he's able to score over guys they couldn't before, how everybody else had an easier time. In this game, it was just being larger than other people, right? Toppin has that size ability. He used to start at the 4. So does Jalen Smith, but they can't beat guys off the dribble. They're not constant post-up threats, and they both played well in this game, to be clear. But that's what makes Siakam such a threat, is at that size and skill level, he just provides such a tricky matchup for so many teams. And tonight he did that constantly, right? That's why he was +5 in a lot of minutes. That's why he hit half his shots. That's why he got to the foul line so much. Over a third of the free throws that the Pacers took were via Pascal Siakam, and he made them as well. And he had a lot of other impacts as well. His defense was solid. He prevented Hayward from even shooting that much the times he was on him, which wasn't always, but still. Lou Dort was on Tyrese Haliburton. Lou Dort probably would have been on Siakam in other ways. Like, that's why you want to have 2 stars. And so Haliburton says, okay, I can give it up and let this guy do his thing. And Siakam just totally cooked all night. Really fantastic game from him to get this one done. Again, Pacers get a big win, only shooting 32% from deep. I think that speaks a lot to their rim attacks in this game, which happens quite a bit. Aaron Nesmith, for example, 1 for 5 from deep, but 5 for 7 inside the arc, 15 points. He was huge. He had some huge momentum plays in the third quarter, a couple dunks. His defense was really good, plus 13 for Aaron Nesmith. And he had some possessions guarding SGA that went pretty well. You know who else guarded SGA pretty well? Andrew Nembhard, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, right? They just got something from everybody in this game. They actually matched up without Jalen Williams specifically pretty well with this Thunder team to be able to guard them pretty well, to be able to have matchups that make sense offensively because they're a little smaller. For once, can you believe it? The Pacers had the size advantage, and you really saw that with Siakam, but it kind of bled through to everybody. They were able to put the right guys on the right people and make it happen. And Tyrese Haliburton, getting guarded by Lou Dort, found ways to carve up the Thunder. This is not how I thought the Pacers would win this game. You know, if you listened to yesterday's show with Tyler Smith, I said at the end, I think for the Pacers to win, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Thunder's 5-out offense. I didn't think Jalen Williams would be out, but that doesn't change their style. The Thunder still played the way they like to play. I thought the Pacers have to score like 125 to keep up. They defended really well in this game, and I know I already talked about that, but that's going to be the standout thing to me beyond the front court guys I've already talked about in terms of what to take away from this game. Like to make Shea have an off-ish night, and some of that's just that he didn't make threes, but Shea had almost as many turnovers as assists and had 30 points, sure, but it took him 27 shots to get there. That's really impressive. That's an MVP candidate that Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith had a tough night. He played 37 minutes, and they still couldn't keep up with the Pacers, right? That's extremely impressive. Their other usually good options in those cases would be Lou Dort, who had a pretty good night. He shot it well. Josh Giddey, 15 points on 15 shots. He didn't play very well. Gordon Hayward was efficient, but not largely impactful. Cason Wallace defended okay, but had some rough turnovers, didn't have any assists. He made some shots, but wasn't great. Isaiah Joe missed shots. Like, it was just a really impressive performance from the Pacers defensively. And a lot of those guys comes back to Nesmith and Nembhard, who played on the end of the floor. And every game, TJ McConnell just stands out. Once again, leading the bench in the ways he does, 9 points, 4 assists. But for the Pacers to really win this game, everything that had to coalesce for them to look better than the Thunder came down to defense and size. And it's so rare for the Pacers to have that be the formula, but it was. Siakam took advantage of it. Turner took advantage of it on both ends. And everybody else just sort of fell into place in a role that made sense. And they all did very well in that role. They all did very well to climb the standings and get it done. Key stretch in this game, late third quarter. The Thunder actually took the lead in the third. It was the only time they were ahead all night. And then to close the third quarter, the last under 2 minutes of that period, the Pacers really took over. They fell behind. I just scrolled to the bottom of the fourth quarter play-by-play. This is something I did want to call out, though, as important for the Pacers. They fell behind 87-86 with a minute 35 to go in the third quarter. All bench unit on the floor. They scored every possession the rest of the quarter and got to stop every possession the rest of the quarter. Jalen Smith draws a foul. Ben Shepherd with a beautiful cut for a bucket. McConnell scores. Nesmith draws a foul. That 5-man bench group, Nesmith was in it. So it was a 4-man group bench group. Jarris Walker wasn't out there. Their bench just continues to be so big as an advantage. They're finally clicking again in a way that is meaningful, and that's something that was talked about on the show a lot around the All-Star break. Is if that group gets rolling, that's going to be huge for the Pacers because Siakam and Haliburton have been good together. Well, that happened again in this game. It happened in Orlando, and it happened again tonight. So that's something else to monitor going forward. Pacers defense, Pacers bench, all sorts of stuff clicking at the same time. Myles Turner playing well. And the final thing, I alluded to it. I did a whole segment on the negative side of this last week. Pacers slow starts. Well, they had a slow start in Orlando as well. So perhaps they're not off the hook yet. One game does not change a trend, but they finally started a game really well. I talked about it with Turner having those 9 points extremely early. They defended well too, right? The Thunder had to take the first time out in under 3 minutes. They were down 11-2 like that in a snap, right? If you weren't ready, you got hit hard, and the Pacers did well to exploit that early in the game. They were getting to their spots. They had energy. They were ready for the level they needed in this game. And then out of that break, they still kept playing well, right? They got their lead up to 20 after like 9 minutes of play. The Thunder had 10 points after 9 minutes of action, right? The Pacers were ready with energy defensively early. They had a good start for the first time. Second time, really, since the All-Star break, they had a good start to a game, the Dallas game being the other one, and they rode that to a win. They were up 9 that fast, right? They won by 10. The first 3 minutes were vital in this game. Had this been a home game and I could have heard it, I'm sure Rick Carlisle would have said something like, we won this game in the first couple minutes, right? He said they lost the game at the start last week against Minnesota. I thought he was exactly right. This time they won a game with their early start, and they rode it to a victory. Huge win for the Pacers, who are now 37-29, and they host the Bulls tonight. Pacers have not been good on back-to-backs, but they have been good against the Bulls. Something's got to give. Let's talk about that game, what to expect from the Pacers, and why it's sneakily not a big game, but something to note for standings-wise. If the Pacers can beat the Bulls, we'll close out today's show with all those notes. But first, we have got to talk about the lovely folks over at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, where you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play a Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And this is what Prize Picks is all about. They have quick withdrawals and easy gameplay. What do? Well, you pick. Is Steph Curry going to have more than or less than 29 points? Is Nikola Jokic going to have more than or less than 10 rebounds? You just pick those stat lines for 2 to 6 players. Watch the winnings roll in. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We also have to talk about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Well, Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match there too. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. Now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Thunder. Hear what Rylan Stiles has to say about a rare, not great performance by the Thunder, although a lot of it, again, I'm sure, comes down to the absence of J-Dub. Or Locked On Bulls for the team we're about to talk about the other way, the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls were playing well, and then they got smoked in their last 2 games. Dallas crushed them by 35 2 days ago. And they lost their game before that to the Clippers by 10. That said, though, before that, they were kind of playing pretty well out of the All-Star break. DeMar DeRozan is like the best clutch player ever this month. They've had some crazy fourth quarter comebacks. So their form is a little better than the team the Pacers have played earlier this season. Here's the thing about this game that's fascinating from a record perspective, right? I don't think the Bulls are going to catch the Pacers in the standings. I don't think the Bulls think they're going to catch the Pacers in the standings, but they're playing well enough, right? They have a better record than Philly over their last 10, same as the Knicks, right? They're keeping pace with all these teams in that 4 to 8 range, and they're really far behind, right? The Pacers are 5.5 games ahead of the Bulls right now with 1 more game played at the time. Pretend the Bulls win that game. 5 games to make up in 20 is pretty hard, right? But let's just look at some percentages right now. If the Pacers beat the Bulls tonight, that would be the 38th win for the Pacers, and 31 is what the Bulls have right now. The Bulls would be 31-35. That win percentage over 82 games gets you 38 wins. So the Pacers would effectively, they would, one, have clinched not losing that tiebreaker, and two, have basically guaranteed themselves into the top 8 in the East by winning that game, right? The Bulls could get hot. The Pacers could get cold. That's not like a lock by any means, but it's already pretty close to that just from a win percentage perspective. And the Pacers have some easy games down the stretch of the season, but they can really kind of lock in. And I think they're probably pretty close to already there. They can pretty much lock in a top 8 seed, so 2 lives in the play-in at worst, if they're able to take down this Bulls team that has had some rocky results. And here's the thing. The Bulls did beat the Pacers in Indy earlier this season. The Pacers beat the Bulls in Chicago right after Christmas. They're just kind of weird, right? They're really inconsistent. They have Kobe White, who's fantastic, and then they don't have a lot of consistency around them, right? They take a lot of twos. They try to get inside the arc. They have some good mid-range shooters, but they're 23rd in 2-point percentage, right? They're not a good 3-point shooting team. They don't get to the line very much. What is their offensive identity supposed to be? Right? It's very confusing to me. They don't have Zach LaVine. Sure, that's part of it. They don't have Lonzo Ball. Sure, that's part of it. But their 114 offensive rating, Basketball Reference offensive rating, not the league's, is perfectly accurate to me at 22nd, because I don't get what the Bulls really are. I don't get how they're trying to beat teams offensively. It seems like they want to have their guys get to their spots and just beat you that way, but there's no defining principle. They want to beat you with speed. They want to get just threes and layups. They want to really attack the rim all the time and spray out from there. They want to play through DeRozan. I just don't know what to make of them on that end of the floor. And they were a good defensive team with this core and this coach in past seasons, right? Last year, the Bulls, Basketball Reference ratings, not NBA.com, but still, were 5th in defensive rating, right? That's a defining thing. That's why they had a better season and were mere minutes from making the playoffs via the play-in tournament. This year, they're 18th in defense, right? They play slow. They don't have a defining principle offensively. Their variance just seems so low, and yet they're smoking their point differential, right? They have 2 more wins than it because they're really good in the clutch. DeRozan can go off, and Kobe White's had this big ascent. To me, to cut off the water of the Bulls and make this a win for the Pacers would be all about slowing down Kobe White, right? He has been really their big improvement in beating Hart. Obviously, DeRozan's a better player, right? He's averaging 23 points a game pretty efficiently. He can score from anywhere on the floor. He's a better passer. He's their high assist man at 5.3 per game. But Kobe White is he is their variance guy. He shoots the most threes on the team by a lot, by the way, right? He takes over 7. Zach LaVine's out for the season. He takes just under 7. Their next highest guy is Alex Caruso, right, who takes 4.5 a game. Kobe White is their big variance guy. He's a good shooter, and that can change games. But if the Pacers slow him down, they don't let him be either a shooter or a creator, you're going to be relying a lot on DeRozan. And then your variance just gets really low because he's not taking a lot of threes. He takes under 3 threes a game, and the rest of their guys who take threes are either not that accurate or not that threatening. So to me, beating the Bulls is about slowing Kobe White, about really pressuring him, speeding him up, making him play faster than he wants, because this, I suppose, is the redeeming quality of the Bulls offensively. They don't turn it over very much. 4th fewest turnovers per game in the league. Credit to Kobe White, credit to all their ball handlers that they don't turn over very much. DeMar DeRozan has the ball all the time, and he only has 1.5 turnovers per game. So if you can speed up Kobe White and force the Bulls into some turnovers, especially with their key ball handlers, that's how I think the Pacers get this win, is forcing that. And if they keep their current defensive level going, I think that will bode well for them in this game, because the Bulls offense is not very threatening and does not have high variance. Interestingly enough, this can be a trap in a way. The Bulls allow the fewest twos in the league, but they give up a high percentage on twos. They give up the most threes, almost 40 a game. The Pacers are fine with taking threes, but they haven't been the best shooting team of late. Perhaps a slump-busting game for Aaron Nesmith and Tyrese Haliburton, although Nesmith might have had his in Orlando. But I think getting to the rim is hard against the Bulls. Getting into the paint, I think, is going to be crucial for the Pacers. Not necessarily to score, but just to make the Bulls' defense move and create shots. Their defense is okay. At least what they're doing makes sense on that end of the floor. But to me, the key to this game for the Pacers, slow down Kobe White by speeding him up, funnily enough, make him make mistakes. And then there's not a lot of high variance ways the Bulls can really get rolling against the Pacers' current defensive level. To me, that should be enough for the Pacers to win, but I've seen the Pacers lose games they should win all season long, and they're 2-8 in back-to-backs this season. After this, they only have 1 more back-to-back, and it's not even a travel back-to-back. It's consecutive games in LA. So it's the same city back-to-back. So this is their last travel back-to-back of the season. Perhaps they can get over some bugaboos there. Could be a huge win, right? 3-game win streak at a key time. Their schedule eases up starting basically now. I mean, this isn't segment worthy because I'm no longer going to talk about the Pacers' schedule easing up or getting harder. But 3 of their next 4, Chicago, Brooklyn, and Detroit, and Cleveland's in there as well as the hard game. But in theory, Pacers take care of business in that stretch. They could be sitting pretty in the standings, but we've seen them not take care of business against bad teams. They've got to earn it. They've got to play better. They've got to win. And I think the key way to do it is making Kobe White's life extremely difficult. I'll, of course, be there, and I'll have coverage of that game tomorrow here on the Locked On Pacers podcast, as well as Standings Watch tomorrow night. I know we talked about it a little, but we got to update it a week later, every week for the rest of the season. There's about a month left in the season. And then Friday, we're going to be joined by everybody's favorite, Caitlin Cooper. She's back. I have tentative topics, but it might depend on what happens in the Bulls game. So I'm not going to release those just yet, but really excited for that. Hope you guys are too. Hope you enjoyed today's show and the Pacers win over the Thunder. If I said something stupid, tweet at me at Tony R. East, or you can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Thanks for listening, everybody. Till then, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.